welcome back to the AnKorage, where everything is awesome and, as it says out on Mastodon, trying to live life in a reasonably real, sustainable, and healthy way. Or, if we want to say it a little more softly, trying to live life in a reasonably real, sustainable, and healthy way. Isn't that great? But no, that is true. But that's for, us here at the home. So there we go. And that is for the AnKorage as well. So we are going to be setting up the Raspberry Pi. As far as the Raspberry Pi OS, after you've actually started up the Pi. Now, giving a heads up, so that we can actually see it on the screen, I have actually created a virtual machine, and we are actually going to be doing the setup in there, and so I'll show you what that looks like. So here we are inside of it. You can see the virtual box settings up top, so a little bit. So I'm just going to get rid of those real quick. So here we are, and when you first fire up your Raspberry Pi, you'll get a splash screen that says Raspberry Pi or something like that. You might see some scrolling of some data, but you should just see the splash screen, and then you're brought to this screen here. And because this is on a virtual machine, I'm using the x86. In other words, if you can install this on a regular PC, especially older ones, and it looks great. As you see it here, but there may be some extra data that we see, and there might not be. So, but this is generally how it is. So when you come in and you fire up your Raspberry Pi, this is what you end up running into, and you have to set it up now at this point. So welcome to this. Before you start using it, there's a few things to set up. Hit next to get started. So we're just going to hit that, and it wants you to set your country. So we're going to set this to the U.S. language, American English, and of course time zone says Attic. I have no idea where that is. So we're going to switch this to New York, because I'm in New Hampshire, and last I checked, we're on the East Coast. So use English language. So we're going to click that off, and we'll hit next to go to the next one. So it's setting the location, and now what you want to do is you want to set a password. Now this is going to be a password for anything that you need to do, particularly, let's say, like we'll ultimately be going into SSH, so we're going to want to have something, so something that you're going to remember. And I'm using a simple one here, and it's not 123. So there you go. Now you'll be brought to update software. So what's going to happen here is this is going to go out to this is going to try to update all of the OS software and things of that sort. Now, because I'm on a virtual machine, it's going to come back with an error saying it can't communicate with it. And that makes perfect sense. So we are actually going to skip this because I ran it before and ran into that error. So after the software is all updated and such, you're actually brought back out to your Raspberry Pi is now set up and ready to go. It's pretty simple, but we do have a little extra things to do here. So we're going to click done, and you're just brought to the desktop, and you'll notice that your taskbar is way up at the top. So you can see like appearance settings. You can change your appearance settings, like the menu bar. You can set it up for the bottom. You can change the colors and things of that sort. You don't really have to do all of that. You can change your desktop picture to whatever you happen to want or anything like that. We're just going to leave it as this is. So, and it'll show you the wastebasket, which is up here. That's your trash. Mounted disks. So like when we get a disk like a hard drive set up and stuff like that, it's going to show up here. But what we want to do is we want to come to preferences and go to Raspberry Pi configuration. We want to go down there. So we go into that, and of course, you brought up and get system, display, interfaces, localization. We're gonna really only be touching the interfaces, but what you want to do is, host name. This is where you can actually name the Raspberry Pi. You can actually name it whatever you like. We're gonna leave it alone, but we're gonna go over. You can change the name of it if you want to give it a special name, but you don't have to, particularly if it's the only Raspberry Pi you've got. So let's go over to interfaces. Now this is where I was talking about you having multiple pieces of interfaces to pick from. Now we only want SSH because after we do this here, we're going to reboot the Raspberry Pi, and then we're going to do an SSH connection, and everything's going to be command line because we are going to be operating this headless. So we will enable SSH, click OK, and now everything's all set. So what you have to do now is you have to reboot it. So you would just basically come down here, come to shutdown, and you want to reboot. I'm not going to do that here, but you want to reboot it, and your Raspberry Pi will reboot, and everything from that point will be automatic. And at that point, you're done with the monitor. You can disconnect it from the HDMI. You can put it back, hook it back up to whatever else it may have been used for, anything like that. Because when we use SSH, we will be completely done with using a monitor. We will be using another computer to connect to it and set it up the rest of the way. So that's basically it for setting up the Raspberry Pi at this point. But you do want to make sure that you connect your hard drive or your storage medium. I'm going to be using this little guy. I'm going to be setting this thing up because I already have 2 file servers. I don't need anything more. And for the sake of the series, I don't need a hard drive. I'm just going to use this little guy. I'm just going to plug this in the back and we'll set this up. And we'll use that. And so what I actually have to do is here's the micro SD card. I've got the operating system on it. I actually have to set up one of my 2 available Raspberry Pis with it, and get it all connected, and get all set up for SSH. So I actually have to do the setup. So I have to take the HDMI cord that's in this monitor that I'm actually looking at right now, and which is my Windows monitor. I use that for my initial Raspberry Pi setup, and then I unplug it because I'm done with it at that point, because I'm running it headless with no video because I use SSH. So what we're going to do is, in the next video, we will be moving to my actual Windows machine and using a connection at that point using SSH, and I'll go over what you actually need to use SSH, and that's basically it for this one. So thanks. We'll talk to you later. So Skál.